Thank you, Alan. Norm Tripp, Academic Affairs.
Thank you. We have everybody here. Minoka, will you call the order, please? The roll. Here.
Vice Chair Lee. Governor Carter.
Here.
Governor Chopra.
Here.
Governor Coffey.
Here.
Governor Frost.
Here.
Governor Huizenga.
Here.
Commissioner Stewart.
Here.
Governor Webster.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is a quick update by Interim Chancellor and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Jan Ignash, on current activities of the Office of Academic and Student Affairs. Jan?
Thank you, Governor Tripp. The first thing to report is that all universities have approved the recommendations on the General Education Core that institutions have been working on per legislation that was passed by the legislature one session before this last one. There is one caveat in one of the one of the approvals from Faculty Senate, and that will go to the Gen Ed Core Steering Committee for additional discussion. I want to point out that this was huge. Our Florida college system partners, all 28 of those campuses, were engaged in the same discussions. And we do a lot here. We talk about performance-based funding and a lot of things, but on the day-to-day that affects the campuses, this gets at the Gen Ed Core, and it affected students and faculty on every single campus, and it was a very, very big deal. So the fact that this went to all the faculty senates, these recommendations for a Gen Ed Core, a common core, where we've agreed on a set of courses that all students should take, is huge. You may also know that in the ACTA report, the American Council of Trustees and Administrators, this was one of the things they recommended Florida for, is the fact that paying attention to a Gen Ed Core. The Academic Coordination Project Work Group met on September 27th in Orlando in person. I attended. They reviewed low productivity programs, and they again met on November 8th via teleconference call to review new proposals. You will recall this is the group, all 12 institutions come together, Florida Poly as well, to discuss new program proposals and to look at demand, unnecessary duplication, and to have those conversations. It's a critical part of our program approval process. The next meeting is in February. The Articulation Coordinating Council met on October 23rd. All representatives from public and private education, and they reviewed a variety of articulation policies and issues affecting Florida students. We have begun planning in the office for beginning in January, the next piece of the work plan for academic and student affairs, which will be a more in-depth look at the research function of universities. Staff has been preparing a couple of info briefs, including the effects of sequestration on the research function and what that means for our universities. So we will begin those conversations within this committee starting in January. And I'm very pleased to report that just this past week, we have signed an agreement with the Department of Economic Opportunity so that in the future, we can receive RIS2 data directly. RIS2 stands for Wage and Record Information System, and this is a critical piece in being able to allow us to track our graduates out of state into jobs. So we'll be able to, this is, as you know, is one of our performance indicators, and it's important that our staff have access to these data. Finally, we've hired a couple of new staff in the office. Jonathan Vidales, who was a recent graduate of Florida State with a master's degree in economics, who brings great statistical skills, and we've also just had a contract signed by Amy Bevan, who was with the University of Texas, Houston Office in Health Sciences, and I'll talk more about her in my Chancellor's update. Thank you, Governor Tripp.
Thank you very much, Jan. The next is approval of committee meeting minutes. I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the June 20, 2013 meeting.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Okay. Thank you. Item number 4A is a request by the University of Central Florida to offer a PhD degree program in criminal justice. This program is expected to produce individuals to enter careers in universities, think tanks, policy institutions, and university-based policy centers where they will work to translate academic research into effective public policy. The program has been through the CAVP Academic Program Coordination Work Group review, and letters of support have been provided by the University of Florida, Florida State University, and the University of South Florida because each has a somewhat similar program. The UCF Board of Trustees approved the program on September 26, 2013, and if approved by the Board of Governors, UCF will implement the program in the fall of 2015. And I'd like to recognize UCF Provost Tony Waldrop to present a brief overview of the proposed program. Tony?
Thank you, Chair Tripp, and thank you for considering our proposal to establish a PhD program in criminal justice to be housed at the University of Central Florida in the College of Health and Public Affairs. I'd also like to acknowledge that I have with me Dean Michael Frumkin from the college, along with Robert Potter, who is the chair of the Department of Criminal Justice, and Dr. Ross Hinkle, the dean of the Graduate College. Prior to presenting this proposal to you, we've reviewed it extensively within the university and have vetted the proposal internally against the 8 criteria for new degree authorization from the Board of Governors. All 8 criteria were met, and 6 were met with strength. In addition, we had external reviewers from the School of Criminal Justice, State University of New York at Albany, and the School of Criminal Justice, University of Cincinnati, look at our proposals, of which they endorsed it. Internally, our departments of Sociology, Political Science, and the Public Affairs program have endorsed the program as being non-duplicative of their programs. The college and the dean of the College of Health and Public Affairs has made strong commitment to the development of a quality PhD program. They've provided 4 additional research faculty member lines, which have been hired, and they also hired a department research director. In addition, the college has committed $150,000 in recurring funds to help support the PhD students during their time in the program. As you mentioned, Chair Tripp, there are 3 SUS institutions that offer PhD programs in criminology and related disciplines, and all 3 have offered letters of support. Those letters are included in the proposal within your packet. The only SUS institution that currently offers a PhD program that includes some elements of criminal justice is Florida State University. In an email that I received from Provost Garnett Stokes, she has expressed that there would not be an impact to their program from ours and recognized some of the unique natures of our program. In addition to the letters of support I just mentioned from SUS schools, we've also included 17 letters from Central Florida criminal justice agencies who have expressed their desire to see such a program developed at UCF. Included in those are letters of support from police departments, Sheriff's Office, the 9th Judicial District Judge and State's Attorney General, Corrections Department of Orange County, and state college programs. The doctoral education required to prepare top-quality criminal justice analysts and scholars requires quite an immersion in the techniques, theories, and practices associated with advanced criminal justice scholarship and analysis. Our plan to achieve this means that students will be fully engaged beginning in their first year to support activities for their learning and demonstration of skills, where they will be working with the faculty directly on a very intense basis. This requires that we support these students at a level sufficient to allow their full devotion to the development of these skill sets. Clearly, this type of training results in more faculty time than you might see in some PhD programs. As noted in your packet, the program will require 57 credit hours beyond a required master's degree. The program's core curriculum focuses specifically on educating students in the criminal analysis of the criminal justice system and academic research that has been conducted on this system's operations and impacts. The program incorporates 3 specialization areas: policing, corrections, and juvenile justice. These are specialization areas that link up very well with the interest and specialization of our research faculty and are certainly a very important critical areas to our partners both in Central Florida as well as statewide. Initially, we're looking at a program that will enroll a steady state of 15 full-time doctoral students with a projected time to degree of 3 years. Over time, we feel that the program may grow beyond that number. When you look at student demand, we can clearly say that it's present. We surveyed undergraduates in criminal justice at UCF, and 74% of those thinking of continuing their education would choose criminal justice, and 83% said they would consider getting a PhD in criminal justice at UCF. We plan to recruit 2 of 5 matriculating students each year from UCF's master's program in criminal justice, and an additional 2 will come from other Florida institutions, with 1 remaining student to be targeted through national and international recruitment efforts. We believe that our in-state recruitment will not impact the enrollments of Florida State University, the University of South Florida, who have somewhat similar programs, since those institutions all recruit at both the master's and bachelor's level, which mean they have approximately 3,000 criminal justice and criminology students to draw from. In terms of employment, we feel that they will certainly find positions likely in Central Florida and other regions of the state, either as post-secondary criminal justice program faculty members or criminal justice research analysts. Currently, the justice system in Florida employs over 140,000 Floridians per year in 500 agencies. It's important to note that the employment for post-secondary level criminal justice faculty members in Florida has increased 51% between 2005 and 2010 and is projected to continue growing in Florida as well as nationwide. For example, during the peak of the 2012 hiring system, 6 SUS universities advertised open assistant professor positions. Nationwide, during the 2010 hiring season, the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences advertised 182 positions. In the fall 2012 round of hiring, the American Society of Criminology site had more than 100 vacancies posted. By contrast, just 45 job seekers posted their credentials on their site. Also, several policy institutes and nonprofit organizations had advertisements. These included the RAND Corporation, the Police Executive Research Forum, the National Legal Aid and Defender Association, and the University of Minnesota's Robina Institute. As mentioned earlier, the research activities conducted in this program will have benefits that align with our goals and the goals of the SUS and will enhance the university, the College of Health and Public Affairs, our regional community partners, and we feel the entire state of Florida. As would be expected in any doctoral program, the students will support the research efforts of the faculty members. And in this case, part of that will be involved working with our partners in the community through the research that goes on with them currently. We certainly feel that the analysis and doctoral level ability of the program's graduates will extend into employment positions as research analysts in local and national agencies, nonprofits, and policy institutes. In summary, we believe the implementation of this unique PhD program will significantly contribute to UCF's efforts to offer strong opportunities to its students, and most importantly, contribute to our local and state national needs in the growing area of criminal justice. We'll certainly be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the board members?
I had one question,
Ms. Wayne?
and maybe it was answered in your presentation, which was very thorough, but I noticed on page 67 it said that it was only going to be offered face-to-face. due to the difficulty of the curriculum, and is there a plan in the future to, with the obvious need that you stated, to have it as an online course?
Initially, we will begin it entirely face-to-face, and a lot of that is due to the individual working with the students, both with our faculty and the agencies and organizations they partner with. We certainly have tremendous power and do a lot of our student credit hours online, so we will be evaluating that as we go forward to see if that is a possibility for part of the first year. But that sort of individual partnering begins the first year, so it's the intense one-on-one is the reason why we're looking at doing it in this way in the beginning.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the PhD in Criminal Justice CIP 43.0104 at the University of Central Florida? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you all for
Thank you very much.
presenting. Very good. Item number 4B is a request by Florida State University to terminate its PhD degree program in physical education. Demand for the existing PhD program has decreased significantly, and no students are currently enrolled. The FSU Board of Trustees approved the termination of the program on June 7, 2013. If approved by the Board of Governors, the effective date of program termination will be fall term 2013. Are there any questions on this item? Any questions from anybody? All right. If not, do I have a motion to approve termination of the PhD in Physical Education, CIP 13.1314 at Florida State University?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll take the second from Joe. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It passes. Item number 4C is a request from the University of North Florida to approve limited access status for the new Bachelor of Science in Radiography because of limited clinical instruction facilities and a limited number of available faculty. This is a collaborative degree program with Mayo Clinic School of Health Sciences in Jacksonville. Proposed minimum admission standards will not affect the ability of Florida College System Associate of Arts degree program graduates to compete for admission into the program. If approved, UNF plans to implement limited access status effective fall 2014. Are there any questions on this item?
I had one, Governor Tripp.
Yes. And I
Based on-
know somebody from UNF is here, so they can answer if you direct it to them.
Hey, John. Based on the fact that the coursework is going to be difficult and that it's a limited access resulting in a high-paying job long-term, is there a reason why you would start at 3.0? I know that you're going to look and pick of the best candidates, but would it, I think if you start there, you end up that if you don't have better candidates, you end up kind of grading down. Do you not make it 3.5 or somewhere in between to raise the bar?
Yeah, and that's likely what's going to happen, but it's just kind of the opening of the door, and then all of the candidates are evaluated and screened, and I doubt very much there'll be anybody with a 3.0 unless they come from some institution and have it could be some unique circumstances, so we don't want to preclude that.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve limited access status for the BS in Radiography, CIP 51.0911 at the University of North Florida?
So moved.
I'll take your second here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Next, item number 5 is a reciprocity agreement with the Southern Regional Education Board Electronic Campus. The Electronic Campus serves as a means of providing nonprofit, regionally accredited colleges and universities within the 16-member state region with a mechanism to deliver online programs and courses to students across the region without the need to obtain additional state authorization from each of the member states. Approving the agreement will allow SUS institutions to continue to fully participate in the electronic campus. And I will now recognize Ms. Vicki Shirley, our General Counsel, to explain the agreement. Vicki?
Thank you, Governor Tripp. We received the agreement, it's a memorandum of agreement from SREB, so that they could reinforce all of the member states' participation in the electronic campus, which was first created by SREB in 1998. Florida has participated as a member state of SREB since 1948, and then signed on by the Board of Regents signed on by adopting the principles of good practice in 1998 when the concept was created. And the universities have been submitting programs to the electronic campus ever since, and we would like to continue to fully participate in that endeavor. We have staff that reviews the programs that the universities submit for participation in electronic campus. Those are reviewed, approved, submitted. They're uploaded to SREB's website. It's a friendly one-stop shop for students in all 16 member states, and these states range from Texas in the west to Delaware in the east, and of course Florida in the south. And if we don't sign on to the agreement, our participation will be somewhat limited. They felt like it was important, given that a few years ago the United States Department of Education promulgated a rule that all institutions receiving Title IV funding would have to be authorized not only in their home state, but in any other host states where they seek to offer programs to residents of other states if those states required or had an authorization process. This generated a national discussion that is still ongoing, because what this would do would allow us to have reciprocity among the 16 member states that we participate in this regional compact with, but there will be a larger issue I think I will be bringing to you within the year that we will have to address with the legislature as far as creating a national state authorization reciprocity agreement. But what you have before you today just covers the 16 member states that participate in the Southern Regional Educational Compact, and we're asking for the board to authorize Dr. Ignash to provide written notification to SREB approving our adoption of the principles of good practice and signing on to the memorandum of agreement, which is for a period of 3 years, and we would ask that Dr. Ignash be given the authority to renew the electronic campus reciprocity agreement at the end of that 3-year term, so we don't continuously bring this issue back to the board.
Thank you. Any questions of Vicki? Yes.
Vicki, it talks about periodical updates. Is that annual, or if you're only a member for 3 years, are we looking at every year we give them updates on what courses are involved in this?
We give them, we submit courses to them as the universities submit them to us, and they undergo the rigorous review process, and then we submit it.
Any further questions? Do I have a motion to approve the Southern Regional Education Board Electronic Campus Regional Reciprocity Agreement and to delegate authority to the interim chancellor to submit written notification of the board's approval to SREB, together with authority to renew the agreement at the expiration of its 3-year term?
So
motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. The motion passes. Item number 6 is a continuation of this committee's discussion of the approval processes used to create new baccalaureate programs in the state university system and the Florida college system. Building on information provided at the September 2013 committee meeting, Chancellor Randy Hanna of the Florida College System has graciously agreed to provide additional insight into the program approval process used by the Florida College System. And Randy has with him Jose Vincentes, president of the Wolfson campus of Miami-Dade College, and Victoria, I believe it's Hernandez, who is their governmental relations person. It really is a privilege to have Randy come here. I have known him personally for a number of years. He and I served on the State Board of Community Colleges a number of years ago. He has been an outstanding attorney in this state for a number of years. And before this job, he served as a trustee on the board of the University of West Florida. And the purpose of what we're trying to do is we're trying to open up the discussion so everybody can understand what is important to each institution. And therefore, we're trying to be very, very frank in our presentations. I hope the questions will be very frank. No decisions will be made today, but we intend over the next year or two, and I've had these conversations with Jan and with Randy, to keep this process going with the hopes that at the end of a couple of years, we can have the best system here. Their system will be the best it can be, and we can work together, in a very easy manner. So, Randy, appreciate your coming.
Thank you very much, Chair Tripp, and it's indeed an honor to be here today. Please allow me to take a moment of personal privilege to thank this board not only for appointing me to the board of the University of West Florida, where I served, but also to the board of Florida A&M University.
That's right.
Where I served. And so I have had a long experience in both the community college and in the Florida college system and with the university system. And, people who were a lot smarter than I am a long time ago made a couple of decisions. And they were really fundamental decisions that has shaped Florida's higher education system. One was a guaranteed transfer from a community college into one of the state universities, not necessarily into the program of your choice, but if you received an AA, a guaranteed transfer into a state university. And I think the data is clear that those students who transfer in do as well as the native students who start at the universities. The second thing that people a lot smarter than I did developed a long time ago was the concept of common course numbering. Dr. Ignash came from a couple of states, and while one of those states has done really well with common course numbering, I think even they would say they wish they had the system that Florida has. I think all of the states across the country wish they had common course numbering, where students in the two systems can transfer back and forth, where a course in one program is accepted, a course in one system is accepted. And when we talk about students going back and forth, please understand that it's not just students transferring from the community colleges to the universities. There are a significant number of university students who transfer back to the community colleges, especially during summer while they're home, or to take one course while they may be working. So that's really at the heart of our system, and I think as we have this discussion about baccalaureates, we need to make sure that we remember that, and we try to continue to work to improve the baccalaureate approval process in such a way that frankly it models the success of those two things that really have impacted our system. About 12 years ago, the Florida legislature gave the institutions in the Florida college system the ability to offer baccalaureate degrees. Unlike any other baccalaureate degrees in the state, the process required a specific approval of each baccalaureate degree by the State Board of Education. and required the college offering that baccalaureate degree to basically collaborate with universities in the area, and for universities in the area, both public and private, to be able to present alternative proposals, or number two, to express objections to that. I have been in this position for more than 2 years now, and so I'm fairly familiar with the process. And Julie Alexander, our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, came to your last committee meeting and explained it, but basically the process is one that after the college has developed their baccalaureate degree program, and Dr. Vicentes will talk a little bit about what they do at Miami-Dade, but after they have developed their baccalaureate program, they then present a letter of intent or letter of interest to our office. That letter then goes to the state university system, it goes to ICUF, it goes to the proprietary schools, it goes to all of the universities who may be interested in that subject. Let me be very clear about one thing that the law requires. The law requires before that letter of interest is submitted that there be discussions with the institutions in that area. I went back and looked. All of the letters of interest that I have received where we have approved baccalaureates, before that letter of interest has come in, there have been discussions between the college and the universities or four-year institutions in that area. So as we talk about collaboration, there has been that discussion before those letters of interest come in. I would also say to you, Mr. Chairman, that in the more than 2 years that I have been in this position, that the State Board of Education has only approved one baccalaureate degree where a university opposed that baccalaureate degree. There's only been one example where the State Board approved a degree where a university opposed that degree. Having said that, there are many opportunities for increased collaboration. I commend you, Chair Colson, I commend you for establishing the Access and Attainment Commission and opening the door for the Florida college system to work with you basically on the data development and also on the policy recommendations that came out of that. A State Board of Education member sat on that committee. Clearly, we have a need for more baccalaureate degrees in this state. And clearly, working together, we can help meet those needs. I think there are a couple of things that I'd like to throw out. And the first one is that remember that the baccalaureate degrees that we offer are generally being offered, not in all cases, but are generally being offered to a different student that are in baccalaureate programs at the state university system. Many of our students are returning students who have been in the workplace or frankly are in the workplace and taking a baccalaureate degree. And the statute, in addition to requiring collaboration with the universities, also requires that we show a workforce demand, a local and regional workforce demand. So when we look at these programs, at the forefront of these programs is whether or not there is a local and regional workforce demand. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, as we look at our programs, you will oftentimes find that they are they're an outgrowth of programs that we have already had in place, such as our Associate of Science programs. And then you develop the Bachelor of Science program out of the Associate of Science program. And I think that does provide us a little more flexibility a little more ability to meet the local workforce demands, and to meet the intent of the statute. I did watch your meeting, the Board of Governors meeting last time, and where there were some concerns expressed about the coordination between the universities and the colleges. Let me say to you that while I think the program works, let me say to you that we are open to finding ways to make it work better. We are open to ways to finding greater collaboration. Chancellor Ignash and I have talked about a number of ideas, including having lists provided between both systems very early in the process about bachelor degrees that we are both working on. There are a couple of other things that I would also like to mention, then open it up to questions, and then I think maybe as part of the questions, Dr. Vicentes may want to, in fact, I would like for him to speak at that point in time. I think as we move forward to try to find new ways to work together on making sure that we're meeting the baccalaureate needs of this state, because it does neither one of us, neither system any good to have duplication or to develop programs that are not meeting the state's needs. I think number one, we have to keep the open line of communication. I think number two, there are a couple of other things that I would like to put on the table also as we move forward. As I started, I talked about our AA degrees. And really, that's at the heart of our system. You know, we have almost 900,000 students in our system. Now, that ranges from adult basic higher education to Associate of Science, to Associate of Art, to certificate programs, to continuing workforce education. So they're not all in degree programs. But only 30,000 of our students are in bachelor degree programs. It is a very small percentage of our overall mission within our system. But our largest program is our AA degree program. And I think as we move forward, one of the issues that we would like to have a discussion about as we move forward is where the growth of the AA programs will be in the future. And a discussion between the universities and the colleges about the growth in the AA program, or the number of freshmen that are coming into that program, and how to best fit the needs of the state. And then finally, the other thing that, actually two more things, two things that I would like to mention. We have set forth on a new path, something we were encouraging of, and the legislature was also encouraging of developing a concept of meta majors or pathways when students come in. And these are broad pathways. And we have established by rule 8 or 9 separate pathways, ranging from STEM to liberal arts to education to business. So when a student comes in, that they will elect a pathway. And that way they will have a much clearer understanding of what they need to do to get that baccalaureate degree 4 years later, whether from the state university system or from one of our institutions. As we look at those pathways, I think it is critical that we work together. We understand that some of the programs that you have require additional prerequisites. I know at Florida Gulf Coast University and Edison State University, they have begun a new discussion about how to make sure that students who graduate with an AA degree have met those prerequisites to get into those programs that require more prerequisites. Julie Alexander, who was here, has a lot of ideas about this and has spoken with Chancellor Ignash, and she calls it 2+2 on steroids. And frankly, I think we need to look at the 2+2 system that we have and see if there's a way that we can ensure when students leave our system with that degree that they have all the prerequisites that they need when they come to you, that we work together on that effort. And then, finally, Mr. Chairman, I would say that one of the places that we're excited about and some of the work that we've seen, and frankly, some of the discussions that I've had with some of the presidents here in this room, is the articulation between our bachelor degree programs and your master degree programs. And probably the most recent example is the one at FSU in criminal justice, where students who are in our criminal justice programs, if they graduate, they're guaranteed admission into the online program, master's program at Florida State University, and can actually take master's courses while they're still in our system. There are a lot of opportunities. I welcome the questions, and then maybe as the questions start, Dr. Vicentes could make a few comments also.
Would you like him to, would he like to speak to us first before? It's a privilege to have him here.
Good afternoon and welcome to Miami.
Thank you.
We're delighted to have you here. And it is indeed an opportunity to continue to dialogue, and a number of the points that have been previously stated resonate very well with our efforts at Miami-Dade College. And we certainly want to continue enhancing the dialogue and the lines of communications with our institutions in the local area. But I think it's important that I mention a few facts in terms of the students that we currently have in the baccalaureate degree programs at Miami-Dade College. Only 4% of the credit enrollment at Miami-Dade is comprised by students in the baccalaureate degree area.
That was 4?
4%, only 4. The average age, 32 years of age. It normally takes them 3 years to complete the upper division level. But a key variable that he alluded to is the fact that our students not only see themselves pursuing a bachelor's degree program, but we instill in them from the very beginning to actually see the opportunities of upward mobility, and that includes educational opportunities. For example, our first bachelor's degree program was under the School of Education. Today, more than 50% of our graduates hold master's degrees. The conversation should not be confined to the baccalaureate degree program level, but as importantly, in terms of creating that mentality of lifelong learnings, and as importantly, for them to be credentialed in the areas in order for them to be able to seek upward mobility opportunities. The vast majority of the student population that we serve is place-bound. They actually have resided and will continue to reside here in the greater Miami area. We've seen, according to our surveys, that over 95% of the employers, and by the way, we are currently enjoying an average of an 88% job placement rate on our bachelor's degree graduates. Over 95% of the employers have conveyed to us that they are fully satisfied with the quality of the students. And in that regard, I can assure you that we undergo a very serious and meticulous process in terms of adhering to every guideline that there is when we actually commence any kind of baccalaureate degree program. Please keep in mind that we go through the same SACS Tier 2 accreditation process. The bachelor's degree programs are required, and up to now, in that particular regard, we have frankly enjoyed a stupendous validation in terms of the accreditation process every time that we've gone through that in that particular regard. So from the perspective of the academic rigor, firstly, we do have needs assessments. We conduct needs assessments. As it was previously stated, our bachelor's degree programs are truly workforce-driven. We would not, under any circumstances, attempt to duplicate any kind of effort that the other universities are doing. We want to be part of the solution when it comes to meeting the workforce need. In terms of our occupational programs and our schools, we basically go by the advisory committee recommendations. Those advisory committees are primordially comprised of business ladies and gentlemen that oversee companies in those fields, and they are the ones that sort of have a pulse and tell us we still need more graduates in X and Y area, and somehow we're not getting them. It is from that perspective that then we commence the effort. We engage the faculty in the disciplines, we engage the students assessing whether they'd be interested in pursuing degrees in those particular areas, and we actually see the short-term as well as long-range outlook in terms of workforce opportunities in that particular regard. And it is under those set of conditions that we actually then effectuate the decisions as to whether we're going to proceed with attempting to go after a bachelor's degree program through our institution. Any questions that you may have? One more thing. Over 50% of our students are in need of financial aid, and more than 2/3 of them commence at our institution in need of college preparatory work before they commence their regular college work.
Good, thank you. There were several questions that had been bantied around, and so Jan supplied those questions to me, and I offered those questions over to Randy. This is not a gotcha type thing. We want to start today and in the future a very open conversation with the goal of making sure at the end of the period of time that we are serving the students, that both institutions have first and foremost the students in mind, so we can raise the people in the state of Florida to a higher level. So Jan had several questions that she supplied, and I sent those to Randy. Jan, would you like to,
Mr. Chairman?
raise those, or someone else? Yes, Randy.
If I may, Dr. Vicente wanted to make just one additional comment before we move to the questions.
I'm sorry, a key point that I forgot to mention is the fact that I'd like to invite the state universities to seriously consider dialoguing with our institutions throughout the state in terms of creating the pathways for more graduate degree programs. The private universities in this area have in fact been collaborating with us in those efforts, and there are a number of actual programs from which our graduates are transferring into graduate programs. And I would seriously like to urge the entire university system to consider that other avenue of opportunity.
Thank you, appreciate it. And of course, Jan will
Ready for the
take up
questions.
that conversation.
Real briefly, and I know Governor Chopra, you have a question too, but Randy and I have been having conversations, our staffs have, and it's good. One of the things we did recently is...
And one thing, before she starts, I would hope that Jan and our people would be invited to the Board of Education to do the same type of conversation that you're having with us. We would like that. And to whatever measures, Randy, you could help to facilitate that, we would appreciate it. We would like to be able to come to you as you are coming to us, so that both sides are at an even keel.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, and in fact, Dr. Ignash came to the not the one yesterday, but the State Board of Education meeting before, to talk about the Access and Attainment Commission work, and we would welcome that opportunity.
I think one of the things we've talked about is getting ahead of that 90-day letter of intent process. That's a formal process, and by that time, the planning is kind of pretty far out of the gate. And so one of the things we did in Washington State, and I know things don't always transplant well, and I've lived a lot of places, but I think this would work, is to have a much earlier process, 12, 15 months ahead of time, when these are still kernels of ideas, before we've hired faculty, before we've recruited students, before local boards have approved these programs, that we have a SharePoint or a list, an exchange, like Chancellor Hanna mentioned earlier, of the programs that we all intend to offer, so that those conversations do indeed start earlier. In good faith, my office sent Chancellor Hanna the list of programs that the university system intends to offer. It's not a secret. We've got those in the university work plans. The Academic Coordination Project Work Group has those, so we've already started that exchange process. Nobody wants a lot of, rules and regulations, additional burdens put on us. What we really want is to start the conversations earlier. I do think that a lot of that can be handled, and my experience in another state is that this is best handled regionally, institution to institution, among the interested parties. Governor Chopra, you had...
Let me pick up on that. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you for joining us, Chancellor Hanna. Does the Florida College system have a list of prospective baccalaureate programs prior to the approval by the College Boards of Trustees? Sort of similar to how we review the university work plans.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. Actually, we do not, and as part of this process, we are working to develop that, and I think it's historical. Really, the reasons are historical. Number one, there was this extra process built into the statute and required collaboration before the letter of interest came in. And remember, as I said, that collaboration has to happen before the letter of interest comes in. And then I think number two, the reason is these have primarily been, in fact, they all are, local and regional workforce needs, so the discussion was really at the local or regional level. I think we're at the point now where I think that would be a beneficial process, and we would be open to doing that, and I cannot imagine any reason that any one of our colleges would not actively participate in it. I took a look at your list and took a look at the list of the things that we have letters of interest in. And frankly, there's very little crossover in those areas.
It appears that individual colleges are doing some of the work already.
Yes.
And it's a question of bringing all of that together and potentially sharing with us as well.
Which, as Dr. Ignash and I have discussed, we are more than willing to do that. I think it's a great idea, and the presidents and provosts that I have talked to also believe it's a great idea.
If I may follow up, I know
Sure.
the emphasis is on early communication. Could you give us some examples of how, from both sides, how that's working between the college and the SUS systems?
I may not be able to give you specifics because once again that happens at the local level. There are a couple of presidents here who may be able to talk about the way they have done it at the local level. I know President Delaney has developed a very good process in Jacksonville about how he works with Florida State College at Jacksonville. I know we have had a renewed focus now at Florida Atlantic University on making sure that there's discussion with all three of the institutions in their area, and which has now led, frankly, to the discussion about articulating those bachelor degrees into the master's degree. And President Krudel, you may want to just answer that question probably better than I can, or President Delaney. or you may not.
No, that's fine. I wanted to get permission, but and really to Jan's point, we sort of informally have with Florida State College and then St. John's River College, as they're in the conceptual stage, they'll kind of meet and bounce the ideas by us, and the only time that we've ever start to run into difficulty if they'd like to add a degree in an area where there's low demand, is there has been a drop in the interest in education in the last few years. And again, it's been more informal and relationship-oriented. Obviously, we know as a state we're going to need a higher baccalaureate production. We just need to make sure that we do it in places where we're not duplicating and wasting the state's resources to get there.
I know UCF has a good relationship. John, could you speak to that?
Probably one of the better ones.
Let me just confine my remarks to the four partners we have in direct connect to UCF, Valencia being by college being by far the largest, but Seminole State College, Lake Sumter College, and I think the new name is East Florida State College,
Eastern Florida State
Community College. We guarantee the consortium members that all of their Associate of Arts graduates and graduates of articulated Associate of Science programs will be admitted to UCF upon their graduation. In return for that guarantee, the state colleges have agreed that they will review with us in advance of developing new programs. Mostly that agreement gets honored very well. It's like any other partnership, you know, it has a lot of moving parts, and some days it works better than others. But we found it to be a very satisfactory relationship, and I think we've got four great partners. We may add one or two more, in fact. And I think it's worked very well in providing a level of certainty to the community college student that she or he will have a seat at a particular institution, and has, according to our partners, raised the commitment that their students have to going on to pursue a baccalaureate degree. There are literally tens of thousands of students who are aspiring to be transfers under that program, and we think it's a great way for us to help meet the need in the Florida workforce for baccalaureate degreed individuals.
Dan?
Sure, may I ask one more
Yes,
question?
go ahead.
It came up after the recent presentation. If I may ask the president of Miami-Dade a question. It was interesting to note that you are pursuing partnership in graduate education. I am interested in knowing if you're making any changes to prepare the students potentially for either research or for advanced degrees, undergraduate students as well.
Okay, one minor correction. I'm the president of the Wilson campus at Miami-Dade College, not the president of Miami-Dade College. Secondly, our academic programs, what the requirements are, continue to be the very, very same. They uphold to the academic rigor in which they've been presented and endorsed and accredited for. So in that particular regard, everything that they contain the very same thing. Another minor correction, we have not gone after the private universities. They have come to us.
Thank you. Randy, you astutely answered most of the questions that were going to be asked in your initial
That's what I get
presentation.
when you send me the questions ahead of time.
Well, and that was terrific. It's very important that we all continue to understand what drives the state college system, what's important to them, as well as what drives us and what's important to us. It would be a colossal failure if we didn't preserve the 2+2 system. It's exciting to think about the fact that while we may not have thought about it in the beginning, we've had conversations here that say the universities are in the business of doing graduate degrees and other degrees. And to the extent that we can take students who are getting the baccalaureate degrees at the state colleges and transfer them into our master and doctorate degree programs. It's a win-win for all of us. And our intent is, in this committee, to make it be a forum where we can have honest discussions about what's best for us and what's best for the state college system as they are changing, and they are changing dramatically. A number of years ago, when Randy and I served on the state board, the idea of baccalaureates was a thought, but it wasn't the happening thing that it is today. And so we're very excited about the fact that I believe through these discussions going forward that we're going to accomplish some things that are going to make the legislature look at us and say, you know what, you're doing the job, we don't have to get involved in it. Okay. Randy, any closing comments?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dick Beard would like to...
I just want, you said there are 30,000 students in the system right now and getting baccalaureate degrees.
Yes, sir.
What does it look like 10 years out? Where do y'all see that?
Governor Beard, we have not done a projection 10 years out.
Give me a guess.
I don't think the growth will be quite as, percentage-wise, quite as fast, but I think we will continue to see significant growth. I think you'll probably see growth, especially in the nursing area, in the public safety area. I think you'll see it in the education area, especially with students who are from a particular area and want to remain in that area. I think that's where you'll see the growth. I think one place that we will probably see some crossover, that our colleges will be interested in offering degrees, and I think it will require greater discussion with you and with the colleges, and where you will be interested will be in the IT area, and how that area is defined. I think we will continue to have that growth. I would say that, following up on what the President said, we have about an 86% retention rate for our full-time students, and that's a 76% three-year graduation rate, because remember, we're AS or AA to BS, so it's a two-year program, which is a very impressive graduation rate for the full-time students in those programs. And the students who graduate, and understand, we are designing programs that are directed toward the workforce. And so it's the graduates who come out of our programs are basically starting salaries above $46,000, $47,000. So with that continued emphasis on the workforce, reaching students who otherwise would not be able to receive a baccalaureate degree, I do see continued growth.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. We really appreciate it.
Wendy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wendy.
We heard from a couple of presidents today where it's working well, and I appreciate that. At our last meeting, though, there was a pretty big outcry from presidents where they didn't think it was working well, and I just would like to give those presidents and any others an opportunity to say the proposed, listserv or whatever you're talking about that's going to be sent out earlier, if that's going to solve those issues for you. It was a pretty strong outcry before, and I don't want to just gloss over it if there are
Wendy,
issues.
I might be able to answer that. We came to the recognition that we know it's not perfect, and it wasn't going to do us any good here to try and point fingers, it's working, not working, whatever. What we've agreed to do is have open discussions with the idea that we're going to move forward, and through conversations with Jan and all the presidents, try to deal with those without it becoming a he said, she said thing at a meeting.
So those open discussions are only supposed to take place with Jan, then?
Pardon? We have agreed that we know there are issues out there we know where it's working, we know sometimes it's not working as well, and the idea is we're going to keep this conversation going and try to resolve it, on a friendly basis. We think that works better. Am I putting it right, Jan?
Yeah, one of the things I thought about is, it's probably a good idea to circle back to this in a year or so and see if this proposed listserv that we're talking about is doing what we wanted it to do. It worked in Washington. I'm hoping that informal conversations will work. It seems to me that a lot of it is just bringing awareness to the issue so that people know that we're watching this, and then to circle back in a year or so and see where we are. But I don't think that should stop any conversations that folks want to have.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, and just to follow up on that, I think since that meeting, I've had discussions with one or two folks sitting around the table, both board members and presidents, about particular issues that they are having. To the extent there's not conversation on our side, I am encouraging that conversation. And I think as we move forward, I think I probably raised a couple of issues in the beginning, that as we move forward, we want to make sure there's conversation with the Board of Governors also.
Wendy, maybe I put it wrong. The purpose of today was to understand both sides, especially their side, and not to try and make it a discussion in which we were going to resolve the issues right here.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting we would do that, and I certainly wasn't looking for anybody to point fingers at this group wasn't playing well in the sandbox with that group. I just wanted a more general, if there was feedback more generally from the presidents that this is going the right direction, or, gee, no, I think we may need something else. And if you've had those conversations individually, I don't feel the need to have repeat them here. I just don't want to close a meeting knowing how emotionally charged the last meeting was and that there were very strong feelings about it, to walk away saying, okay, well, we talked to, two people talked who said it was going well, and so we're done with this issue. If the presidents are comfortable that this is going the right direction, I'm fine, and if you've had those conversations independently, that's fine.
We are starting the process. For the presidents are here, are you satisfied with the direction we're going? And would you like to comment about what happened here today and what we're trying to do?
I think that the conversation is very important that you're starting, and I'm really happy to see that. I think we have a long way to go, and that sometimes the conversations on what baccalaureate programs colleges want to offer, we're the last ones to know, but I think that it's a good place to start and that the conversation is good. I hope it works.
Thank you. John, you got any comment?
Glad to see the discussion starting. I think it can be very fruitful if we stay with it.
We'll stay with it as long as I'm still alive. Mark?
Judy? Stay with it. No, I think it's very fruitful. We have a good relationship with all of our state colleges, community colleges in the Tampa Bay area. I think the conversation is important and would be happy to be part of it.
Bernie?
I'm not big on conversation. I think you need to get this sorted out. And I think you need to start with the way it's set up. I've never seen a state where college degrees were approved by two completely different agencies. And that's the way we've got it here. And you can have all the conversation you want, but when you got one entity can approve degrees without the other entity that supposedly approves the same degrees having any significant role other than conversation, I think there's a limit on how much you're going to accomplish in that model. So I think you need to go back and look at the model itself.
On this side.
Well, I've only been in this role a relatively short period of time, but one of the things that I've been doing is I have reached out to all three of our state college partners, and I think we have already started those conversations, and including the discussions about the 4+2 as well, because from our institution, we still have a very robust 2+2 program. We still get the majority of our students from transfer students, and so we feel at this point it's working for us.
We continue to nurture and develop our relationship with the state colleges within our region. That's working fine. And maybe at the risk of somewhat gilding the lily, I share some of the concerns articulated by my colleague, President Matchin, as well. But certainly in Southwest Florida, I think working with Edison State College and more recently with the State College of Florida in Sarasota, it's working well, and we're actively involved in trying to make it work even better.
Likewise, in our area, Sarasota, Bradenton, the institutions there are so different and the missions are so different that they can work very well together. So just in our region, there aren't issues. And we're working to make them a lot better.
Okay. Randy, back to you.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
May I?
Yes, you may.
As a guest to the committee?
Oh, no.
My family, my wife in particular, is very involved with mentoring about 150 students. And she concerned me this week when she indicated that the state college in our region in Southwest Florida was rethinking remedial education and not permitting remedial education to be part of the process at the state college. I don't seek answers here today, but as President Macon said, we better rethink as a state this entire process of education. And to the extent we continue to look at baccalaureate degrees in silos as opposed to a matrix, we're going to jeopardize the efficiency and the effectiveness that the taxpayers of this state, the students, the moms and the dads, and the people who pay the bills expect of us. This is a challenge that we all face. It's not individually, but collectively. But everybody in this room involved in education needs to step up and rethink the process of education, because we continue to think in silos. The workforce and the economic war that we face globally will be determined by the effectiveness with which we prepare our adults and our students for the coming challenges. So I'm particularly concerned about the redundancy that exists between the state college in my region and $30 million nursing buildings built within 8 miles of one another that are not complementary but supplementary. And we have serious issues we have to face. And I thank Wendy for bringing this up, but I felt compelled to speak my mind here today. I think we need to continue this dialogue in a positive way. As the chair has indicated, the 2+2 program in this state worked, and it worked very well. And the vast bulk of jobs in this state in the next 10 years are going to require a great many two-year degrees, certifications, vocational education. They're not just all baccalaureate and master's degrees. So, thank you very much for letting me, I don't expect any kind of response. It was more of a statement.
Thank you. No, we've agreed that we need to have a fair and open and frank conversation, and Randy and I talked about that. No holding back. If we don't discuss it here, we won't hear it, and so it's good that we know how people feel. Back to you, Randy, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. in addition to serving on the board at the University of West Florida and at Florida A&M, I have 2 degrees from 2 of the institutions here and pay tuition for another to one of those institutions for one of my children. So I'm very appreciative of the impact of the state university system. I do want to close, and I don't want to close on a negative note, but I do want to put some of the things in perspective that I have that we've heard and that are issues as we move forward. First, let me talk about the issue of remedial education, because I think that is something you need to be aware of. It was a legislative mandate that developmental education for students who graduated after 2008 would be optional. It does not mean that the institution in your area will not be offering developmental education. It means it will be optional for those students. Let me say to you that we have been working as hard as we possibly can on that issue. That is going to require a fundamental shift, just as it has in all of your universities. You're spending a lot more time and money today on academic advising than you were 10 years ago. And that's the issue. That's where we're going to have to focus our effort. We needed to reform developmental education in the state, and we are committed to carrying out the legislative request, the legislative direction in that area. So I did want to clarify.
Well, let me clarify what I said. Maybe by working together, maybe this group and your group could do a better job of representing remedial education to the legislature, so you could jump into that with both feet as opposed to having to follow the direction which many of us believe was well-intended but is not working out in practical terms. So I would applaud us working together, identifying what those issues are, and seeing if we can change some of the status quo that we seem to be accepting today.
And I, Mr. Chairman, once again, I look forward to having as you're aware, the state university system basically does not offer remedial education except at one institution, and I would welcome the interest of the state university system in that discussion. I do want to say that with respect to President Manchin, I am a believer that probably the best decisions are the ones made closest to where the action is. And I'm a firm believer that, and a perfect example of that was when Chancellor Ignash came before the State Board of Education and presented the findings of the Access and Attainment Commission. The degrees that were being offered, the degrees that were being presented were the ones that were on the list of the Access and Attainment Commission. And so that shows that at the local level, they were understanding where the workforce needs are. So I think conversation is good. And as we have that conversation, Mr. Chairman, and I think the member pointed out correctly that there are going to be a lot of needs for 2-year degrees and certificates. And as I look at, I hear the word mission creep, and I want to be careful about this. But you know, I pick up the paper all the time, and I see research institutions that are offering certificate programs all across the state. And so as we look at what we're offering, I think we need to have that discussion about the AA program, about certificate programs, about baccalaureate programs, and about making sure that all of them articulate and we focus on the needs of the students. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy, for coming. We will continue this. Thank you very much. Dean is now really hammering me, so we're going to try and ask the balance to run a little quickly. Item 7 on the agenda includes a student affairs update, and I will first call on Dr. Ron Toll. Is Ron here? To provide an update on the work of the CAVP Academic Program Coordination Work Group. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Governor Tripp and Madam Chancellor. What I'd like to do is just provide a little bit of an overview with regard to the CAVP. First of all, I want to say we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to report out at this committee meeting. We previously had not done that, and so we welcome that as a new role for us in being able to provide you, the governors, with some information that spans our area of involvement in terms of state university system. The CAVP meets each time that the Board of Governors meets, in addition to meeting several times through phone calls and our first video conference recently. It's interesting that we're called the CAVP, which is the Council of Academic Vice Presidents, but then everybody says, well, it's the provosts. So I do want to make it clear that in most cases we are wearing two very different hats. Our role as CAVP, individual vice presidents for academic affairs, typically means that on each of our campuses we tend to reflect ultimate responsibility for the integrity of the academic programs, and that is certainly a very important role. But oftentimes our role as provost also is much more expansive in academic programs, where we serve as key advisors to the president's cabinets and to the president, him or herself. So the full range of our responsibilities certainly includes curriculum, but goes much more broadly to include budget, strategic planning, and, yes, on occasion, damage control. So we have pretty wide-ranging understanding of what goes on our campuses, and I say that to say that we welcome the opportunity to provide input to the Board of Governors as early in the process as practicable with regard to a range of different issues that are of importance to all of us within the state university system of Florida. A couple recent examples include performance-based funding, the delineation of programs which fall under the category of having strategic emphasis within the state university system, and as we just heard from the previous report, the relationship of the state university system to the state college system and the profitable and beneficial and rewarding articulation of those two organizations. So we are here to assist you, and we are available to respond on a moment's notice to things that are important to you, to provide early feedback, to enrich those conversations, and most importantly, to provide the benefit of all of our collective experience to make the very best decisions that you as the Board of Governors certainly wish to make. I want to segue into this morning's meeting of members of different boards of trustees across the state university system in terms of the roundtable conversation on academic and student affairs. We felt, and Kevin Bailey, who leads the group for student affairs that's in parallel construction to CAVP, thought that this morning's meeting was excellent. It was driven by the trustees, and we greatly appreciate those of you who organized this meeting. There were a number of important topics that came up, certainly to include performance-based funding, and I bring to you a resolution that was unanimously supported by approximately 14 members of the different individual boards of trustees from across the state. Resolved that the Board of Governors recognize and acknowledge that students who transfer between university system institutions and graduate in 4 or 6 years have been successfully educated by both the original admitting and graduating institutions. This may seem to be a small thought, but it has enormous perspective in that there was a desire by that group that I bring to you this afternoon to suggest that as we continue talking about the granularity of improving upon the 10 metric-based matrix that we are going to use going into this next fiscal year, that one of those metrics, the graduation rates in 6 years, be seen as a system success and not just an institutional success by individuals. We lose from our institutional success and certainly from the statewide success in understanding that students who leave any one of our universities and then transfer to any of the others and then successfully graduate within 4 or 6 years represent an important contingent, if you will, among all of our students across the 400,000 students within the system. And right now, the way we look at that particular individual matrix fails to capture that very, very important cohort. I think just in and of itself, that expression of support for system success by the trustees who obviously represent individual universities, their individual universities, talks about the cooperative spirit that is found within the state university system of Florida. My last thought is that in the past year and a half, the group that I chair, the Council of Academic Vice Presidents, and the group that Vice President Bailey from West Florida chairs, the student group, student advancement group, student affairs group, excuse me, have begun to work more collaboratively. This is also another reflection of how this system is going to achieve even greater outcomes in the future, because we recognize that student affairs and academic affairs share in a cooperative responsibility the totality of education of our great students here in the state of Florida. So I thank you for the opportunity to report out. I will look forward to the opportunity to report out at future Board of Governors meetings. Governor Tripp.
Thank you, Ron, and we appreciate it. We are trying to make this committee live up to what it is, academic and student affairs, and you can see that with Jan's push that we are trying to afford everybody the opportunity to be here so that we can be better for everybody, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Next, I will call upon
Mr.
Governor...
Chairman, if I may, before Provost leaves, I had the pleasure...
Very quickly.
Very quick question. I had the pleasure of attending that breakout session that Provost talked about, and I'm glad Governor Coons has joined us. As we continue to refine this, since there is a huge emphasis on graduation rates in a number of institutions, this point that they're making of transferability between the institutions, not penalizing the original as well as the receiving institution, I think is a point we should take into future consideration.
Okay.
Can I ask, since I'm the one that's giving you a hard time about the agenda?
You may,
I'll take
Mr. Chairman.
Is it your suggestion that the institution who loses a student get credit for the 6-year graduation or just not be punished for the departure?
Well, the expression of sentiment that I bring to you as the messenger this afternoon, I believe suggested that this is a success that should be borne and placed...
You want credit.
We all want credit.
Yeah.
So you're going to get credit twice? That's good.
Yeah. So,
double dipping, Provost? Come on.
But you would agree that it would be very beneficial if you just didn't get punished. That would be a step forward for you all.
The numbers
Well,
are really better.
you know, it's like that old saying that, you know, the beatings will continue until morale improves, but...
Big believer.
I think what we're trying to say, or what the group this morning was trying to say, is that the institution that recruited the student and trained that student perhaps through the first year or 2 years deserves credit in that if the student then graduates within that 4 or 6 year period from another SUS institution, the preparation for that success was borne by that first institution. So, Governor Link, I appreciate your calling me to task that, you know, you can't take 0 and 1 and add it together and get 2, but I would suggest that from the perspective of just applying success when the sum total of that metric across the 12 institutions is not going to be sullied or watered down by an understanding that there was a cooperation between 2 universities to turn that successful graduate into a wage earner and a well-trained and educated, civilly minded citizen of the state of Florida, that's a slight extension of statistical analysis that we would be able to endure.
Well, as long as we, because I would hate for us to have the asterisk and have to say, well, you know, yes, we realize that if all goes well, our graduation rate is 112%. I mean, that's just not, we got to figure something out that's not going to make us look foolish either.
I think you bring up a good point, and that Dean recognizes that we may need further discussion on that, and there probably is a way at the end of the day to recognize the input of both institutions, or it could be 3 institutions. Your point is that let's go towards getting people through the system quicker and let everybody benefit from that.
That was the expression of the trustees at this morning's meeting. Yes, Governor Tripp.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Item 7 on the agenda includes the student affairs update. And I'll first call on next I'll call upon Governor Fossey to provide us with a brief update on issues of interest to the Florida Student Association and SUS students.
Thank you, Governor Tripp.
Fossey.
Thank you, Governor Tripp. I know we're short on time, so I'll try to be quick here. On October 30th, which was about 3 weeks ago, the 11 student body presidents convened to approve what's called the Florida Student Association Legislative Agenda for the 2014 session. Before explaining specifically what was passed, I need to take the time to thank the student body presidents for taking the time to do their homework, no pun intended, and show up with the documentation necessary to prove that these issues really do affect our students, and that at the end of the day, if passed, would benefit the student constituency in the state university system. It is a 2-pronged approach, what we approved on October 30th. Our first will be partnering with the state university system administrations, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and other various builders associations across the state of Florida to really highlight the significance of our facilities on our university campuses. Our campaign, if the university administrations will work with us, we hope to support a transfer in non-recurring general revenue into PICO to fund the necessary critical deferred maintenance across this system, and to allow the funding of the top priorities of each of the individual institutions across the state. This does fall in line with the legislative budget request that was passed at our September meeting in Sarasota. The students would also like the ability to leverage the revenue placed in the Capital Improvement Trust Fund fee program. We also support legislative efforts to give universities more flexibility to do what are called public-private partnerships, or what I've been calling P-cubed for the last couple of weeks. It's similar to what a House bill did last session for other state entities. And lastly, out of this campaign for facilities, we support allowing our universities the flexibility to use enterprise revenues that auxiliaries on campuses generate, such as housing and parking services, to be used to support debt for multi-purpose projects on university campuses. This all encompasses what we feel are the issues with our facilities and how the state of Florida needs to recognize how important these are. So part one, obviously, is facilities. Part two is a tuition equity agenda for various student groups, including honorably discharged veterans, U.S. citizens of children of undocumented immigrants, and undocumented students. We hope to grant in-state residency status for all three of those student groups. It's important to note that on October 30th, this legislative agenda was approved unanimously by all 11 student body presidents in the state of Florida, and that we look forward to working with the legislature and Governor Scott's office to get all of these things accomplished by April of next year. We also approved the date for our annual rally in Tallahassee, Rally and Tally. It will be on March 26th, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you there as well, board members. And I'd also be remiss to not mention other issues that came up in our meeting, which I will be following up closely with Chancellor Ignash and the rest of the BOG staff. Just regulations and information regarding the excess credit hour surcharge policy, and if it really does incentivize having our students graduate within the 4 or 6 years that we state, and programs that are need-based in the state of Florida, and the effects of the new Bright Futures eligibility requirement changes and how our students in the system need need-based funding. I'll take any questions about any of the issues that I touched, and thank you, Governor Tripp.
Any questions? Thank you, Governor Fossey. Finally, I call on Dr. Kevin Bailey, Chair of the SUS Council for Student Affairs, to update the committee on activities and interests of the council as it plans for the 13-14 academic year. Kevin.
Thank you, Governor Tripp. I have one item to share with governors. We held the second annual Anti-Hazing Summit on October 17th at UCF. This group may be reminded that the feedback from the first summit was, can we provide an opportunity to come together, perhaps one in the central part of the state, and then two, to tag along with an existing conference or reason to get together, and we did that at UCF. We had 102 people attend from all 11 campuses and some private institutions such as St. Leo University of Tampa. The speaker was Mr. Brian Smith from FAMU, who led us off, and then there were several breakout sessions on topics such as the psychology of hazing, adjudicating hazing allegations, and hazing and bullying. And so, again, we are committed to taking the feedback from the second annual summit and making the third annual summit even better. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything further from the board members? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We stand adjourned.